When I first met Ellie, we were in middle school, bonding over our shared love of music and a mutual dislike for math. Over the years, she became my confidant, my partner in crime, and the sister I never had. From late-night sleepovers to cheering each other through heartbreaks, we were inseparable. I thought there was nothing we couldn't share, until now. Things started to shift a few months ago when I introduced Ellie to my boyfriend, James. James and I had been dating for almost a year, and while I wasn't rushing into anything, I knew he was someone special. He had this calming energy about him, always kind and patient. Meeting Ellie was a big deal for me. I valued her opinion almost as much as my own feelings. The first meeting went well, or so I thought. Ellie was warm and friendly, just as I'd expected. James seemed his usual charming self, cracking jokes and winning her over with his easygoing nature. But as the weeks went by, Ellie began acting different. At first, I brushed it off as overthinking. Maybe she was busy with work or preoccupied with her personal life. But then the comments started. Little things like, "James is really amazing, isn't he?" Or, "You're so lucky to have someone like him." Compliments are one thing, but the intensity behind her words fell off. Then came the invitations. Ellie started suggesting group hangouts more frequently, always making sure James was included. I didn't think much of it. I mean, why wouldn't my best friend want to hang out with my boyfriend? But there was a nagging feeling I couldn't shake. One evening, Ellie came over for dinner. James was working late, so it was just the two of us. We opened a bottle of wine and fell into our usual rhythm of gossip and laughter. That's when she dropped the bombshell. "Don't take this the wrong way," she began, her voice wavering, "but I think James and I have a connection." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "What do you mean?" I asked, forcing a laugh to mask the sudden knot in my stomach. Ellie hesitated, twirling her glass of wine. "It's hard to explain," she said, not meeting my eyes. "But I think he's my soulmate." The room seemed to tilt. For a moment, I thought it was the wine hitting me too hard. "Your soulmate," I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," she said, her tone oddly calm, like she was confessing something inevitable. I didn't want to say anything, but every time we're together, I feel this pull, like we're meant to be. I stared at her, waiting for the punchline. But her expression remained deadly serious. "Ellie," I began, my voice shaking, "he's my boyfriend." "I know," she said quickly. "And I would never do anything to hurt you. But don't you believe in destiny? Sometimes things happen for a reason." My heart was pounding so hard, I could barely think. This was Ellie, my best friend, the person I trusted most in the world. And she was sitting here, telling me she thought my boyfriend was her soulmate. The rest of the night passed in a blur. I barely remember what I said, only that I managed to get her to leave without completely exploding. As soon as the door closed behind her, I broke down, the weight of her words crashing over me. How was I supposed to process this? Could I even talk to James about it without sounding paranoid or insecure? Worse, what if he felt it too? I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I replayed Ellie's words over and over again. "I think he's my soulmate." The sheer absurdity of it made me question everything. Was I overreacting? Was this some kind of twisted joke I wasn't in on? Or worse, what if she actually believed it? By morning, my mind was a mess of paranoia and self-doubt. I couldn't keep it to myself anymore, so I decided to talk to James. After all, he deserved to know what was going on, or at least part of it. That evening, as we sat down for dinner, I took a deep breath and blurted it out. "James, do you think Ellie has been acting strange lately?" He looked up from his plate, his brow furrowed. "Strange how?" "I don't know," I said, trying to sound casual. "She just seems overly interested in you. Like, she compliments you a lot and always wants to hang out when you're around." James chuckled, clearly not understanding the weight of my words. "Well, I mean, she's your best friend, right? Maybe she's just trying to get to know me better." I hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "It's more than that," I said finally. "She told me she thinks you're her soulmate." That wiped the smile off his face. "She what?" "Last night," I explained, my voice trembling. "She said she feels a connection with you." Like some kind of destiny. James stared at me, his fork frozen midair. That's insane, he said after a long pause. I don't even know how to respond to that. I don't either, I admitted, tears welling up in my eyes. She's my best friend, James. I don't know what to do. He reached across the table and took my hand. Look, whatever she's feeling, it's not mutual. I'm with you. You know that, right? I nodded, but his reassurance only did so much. The damage had already been done. The next few weeks were tense, to say the least. I avoided Ellie as much as possible, ignoring her texts and dodging her calls. Part of me felt guilty for ghosting her, but I couldn't face her, not after what she'd said. Meanwhile, James was doing his best to act normal, but I could tell the situation was weighing on him too. Then came the breaking point. One Saturday afternoon, James and I were out grocery shopping when my phone buzzed with a text from Ellie. Against my better judgment, I opened it. Hey, can we talk? I need to explain myself. Please don't hate me. I showed the message to James, who sighed deeply. Maybe you should hear her out, he suggested.
Why?
So she can tell me again how she thinks you're her soulmate. I snapped. I'm just saying, avoiding her isn't solving anything, he said gently. Maybe it's better to clear the air. He wasn't wrong, but the thought of confronting Ellie made my stomach churn. Still, I couldn't keep running forever. That evening, I agreed to meet Ellie at a nearby coffee shop. The moment I walked in, I spotted her sitting in the corner, nervously fidgeting with her cup. Thanks for coming, she said as I sat down, her voice soft. I crossed my arms, not bothering to hide my frustration. What do you want, Ellie? She looked down at her coffee, her face flushed with embarrassment. I'm sorry for what I said. I shouldn't have told you about my feelings. It wasn't fair to you. You think. I shot back, my tone sharper than I intended. Ellie, you're my best friend. How could you say something like that and expect everything to be okay? I didn't mean to hurt you, she said quickly, tears pooling in her eyes. But I can't help how I feel. Well, maybe you should have kept those feelings to yourself, I retorted. You put me in an impossible position, Ellie. How am I supposed to trust you now? I don't know, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I thought you deserved to know the truth.
Why?
So you could feel better about yourself. I snapped. No, she exclaimed, her eyes wide with panic. I just wanted to be honest. I thought maybe if I told you, I could move on. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. Was she really trying to move on? Or was this just another way to justify her feelings? Either way, I wasn't sure I could forgive her. Ellie, I said, my voice trembling, I need time. I can't just pretend this didn't happen. She nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand. I'll give you space. But please, just don't hate me. I didn't respond. Instead, I got up and walked out, my mind racing with emotions I couldn't even begin to untangle. After leaving Ellie at the coffee shop, I felt a crushing weight settle over me. Her tears, her apology, they should have brought some kind of closure, but they didn't. If anything, they left me even more confused. Was she genuinely remorseful, or was this just a desperate attempt to salvage our friendship without truly letting go of her feelings for James? James tried his best to comfort me when I got home, but even he seemed uneasy. You don't have to make any decisions right now, he said, pulling me into a hug. Take the time you need to figure this out. But that was the problem. I didn't know how to figure it out. The dynamic between Ellie, James, and me was like a tangled knot, and every attempt to unravel it only made it tighter. For a few weeks, life moved forward in a strange, fragile limbo. I barely spoke to Ellie, and she respected my request for space. Meanwhile, James was walking on eggshells, trying to be supportive without overstepping. Then came the night that changed everything. James and I had just settled in for a quiet evening at home when his phone buzzed with a notification. He glanced at it, his expression shifting from casual to concerned in an instant. What is it? I asked, already feeling a pit forming in my stomach. It's Ellie, he said, hesitating before turning the screen toward me. The message was short but chilling. Asterisk, I need to see you. Alone. Asterisk. I stared at the words, my mind racing. What the hell is she thinking? I muttered. James frowned, his fingers tightening around his phone. I don't know, but I don't like this. I've never given her any reason to think I'd meet her like this. Are you going to reply? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. No, he said firmly. This is crossing a line. Despite his reassurance, the message lingered in the back of my mind like a dark cloud. What did Ellie want to say to him that she couldn't say to me? And why now? Over the next few days, I tried to push the incident aside, but my curiosity got the better of me. Against my better judgment, I decided to confront Ellie about it. I showed up unannounced at her apartment, my heart pounding as I knocked on the door. When she opened it, her face immediately turned pale. Why are you here? She asked, her voice wavering. You tell me, I shot back, holding on my phone. What's this about you wanting to meet James alone? Her eyes widened as she realized I knew. It's not what you think, she said quickly. Then what is it? I demanded. She hesitated, her gaze darting around the room as if searching for an escape. Finally, she sighed and stepped aside, gesturing for me to come in. Once we were seated, she took a deep breath. I was going to tell you, but I didn't know how, she began. I've been seeing a therapist. I blinked, caught off guard. Okay, and we've been talking about my feelings for James, she continued, her voice trembling. My therapist suggested that I write him a letter to help me process everything. That's what I wanted to talk to him about. A letter? I repeated, my skepticism clear. Why didn't you tell me this sooner? Because I knew you'd react like this, she said, her tone defensive. I'm trying to deal with my feelings in a healthy way, but you keep treating me like some kind of villain. Her words stung, but I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Ellie, you crossed a line when you told me James was your soulmate, I said firmly. If you really want to fix this, you need to be honest with me, completely honest. She stared at me for a long moment before finally nodding. You're right, she admitted. I haven't been fair to you. But I promise, I'm not trying to steal James from you. I needed closure. Her confession seemed sincere, but the tension between us was still palpable. I left her apartment feeling slightly more at ease, but still wary. A few days later, Ellie texted me again. This time, her message was more straightforward. Asterisk, I finished the letter. Can I give it to you instead of James? Asterisk. I hesitated before replying, but eventually I agreed. If this was her way of moving on, I wanted to support her, even if part of me was still hurt. When we met, she handed me the letter, her hands trembling. You don't have to read it, she said quickly. Just give it to him when you're ready. I nodded, tucking the envelope into my bag. But as soon as I got home, curiosity got the better of me. I opened it and began to read. The letter was long and heartfelt, detailing Ellie's struggles with loneliness and her misguided feelings for James. She apologized profusely for the pain she'd caused me and vowed to work on herself. But then, near the end of the letter, I came across something that made my blood run cold. Asterisk, I hope you'll forgive me for what I did last month. I was desperate and confused, and I never should have kissed him. It was a mistake, and I'll regret it forever. Asterisk. I stared at the words, my hands shaking. Kissed him? She had kissed James? The room seemed to spin around me as the realization sank in. James hadn't mentioned anything about this. Was he hiding it from me? Or had he downplayed it to avoid making things worse? My mind raced with questions, but one thing was clear. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The words in Ellie's letter replayed in my mind like a haunting echo. Asterisk, I'll regret it forever. Asterisk, she kissed him. Ellie, my best friend, the person I had trusted the most outside of James, had crossed a line she could never uncross. My hands shook as I folded the letter back up and stuffed it into the envelope. I sat there, staring at the wall, trying to figure out what to do next. Should I confront James? Should I go back to Ellie and demand answers? My heart felt like it was caught in a vice, each beat tightening the grip. James came home a little later, his usual warm smile faltering as he noticed my expression. Hey, what's wrong? He asked, setting his keys on the counter. I held up the letter. Did Ellie kiss you? His eyes widened, and for a split second, I saw panic flash across his face. That was all I needed to confirm it, he knew. He sighed and sat down across from me. I was going to tell you, he said softly. But I didn't want to hurt you. It happened weeks ago, and it meant nothing to me. She caught me off guard, and I pushed her away immediately. You didn't think I deserved to know? I asked, my voice trembling with a mix of anger and betrayal. I didn't want to cause unnecessary drama, he replied, his tone defensive. You were already upset about everything, and I didn't want to add to it. Unnecessary drama? I repeated, my voice rising. James, this isn't just about a kiss. It's about trust. How am I supposed to trust either of you when you're keeping secrets like this? He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I swear, I didn't want to hurt you, he said. Ellie's feelings caught me completely off guard. I've never given her any reason to think I feel the same way. I wanted to believe him, I really did. But the weight of the betrayal felt too heavy to ignore. I need some time to think, I said, standing up. I can't deal with this right now. The next few days were a blur of conflicting emotions. I couldn't stop replaying everything in my head, the kiss, the secrets, Ellie's confession. Part of me wanted to cut ties with both of them, to walk away and start fresh. But another part of me couldn't let go so easily. Ellie texted me the day after I confronted James. Asterisk, I know you read the letter. Can we talk? Asterisk. I ignored her at first, but she was persistent. By the end of the week, I finally agreed to meet her. We sat across from each other at the same coffee shop where we'd had our last tense conversation. Ellie looked pale, her hands fidgeting nervously as she sipped her drink. I'm sorry, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I know I've said that 100 times, but I mean it. I never should have kissed him. Why did you do it? I asked, my voice cold. She sighed, tears welling up in her eyes. I don't know. I was confused and desperate. I thought, maybe if he felt something for me, it would validate all these feelings I've been struggling with. But he didn't. He pushed me away, and I realized how wrong I was. Her words stung, but they also confirmed what James had told me. He hadn't reciprocated her feelings. Still, the damage was done. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said honestly. You didn't just hurt me, you betrayed me. You put your own selfish desires above our friendship. I know, she said, her tears spilling over. And I don't expect you to forgive me. I needed to tell you the truth. We sat in silence for a long time, the weight of her confession hanging heavily between us. When I got home, James was waiting for me. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. How did it go? He asked cautiously. I shrugged, dropping my bag on the couch. She admitted everything. She's sorry, but I don't know if that's enough. He nodded, his expression somber. I don't blame you for feeling that way. I should have told you about the kiss as soon as it happened. I was just trying to protect you, but I see now that I only made things worse. I sat down beside him, my emotions swirling in a chaotic mess. James, I love you. But this whole situation has made me question everything. Our relationship, my friendship with Ellie, even myself. I don't know how to move forward from this. He took my hand, his grip firm but gentle. We'll figure it out together, he said. I'm not giving up on us. His words brought a flicker of hope, but I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Trust, once broken, is hard to rebuild. Weeks turned into months, and slowly, things began to settle. I cut back on contact with Ellie, focusing instead on rebuilding my relationship with James. He went out of his way to prove his loyalty, and over time, my faith in him began to return. Ellie, on the other hand, faded into the background. We exchanged polite messages now and then, but the closeness we once shared was gone. One day, out of the blue, she sent me a long message. She told me she was moving to another city to start fresh. I need a clean slate, she wrote. I hope someday we can be friends again, but I understand if that's not possible. As I read her words, I felt a strange mix of sadness and relief. Losing her was painful, but I knew it was for the best. Some wounds take time to heal, and some relationships are better left in the past. Looking back, I realized that this whole ordeal had taught me a valuable lesson about boundaries, trust, and self-respect. I had been so focused on keeping everyone happy that I forgot to protect myself. But now I was stronger. And while the scars of betrayal would always remain, I knew they didn't define me. Months later, I found myself standing in the park where James and I had our first date. The air was crisp, the sun casting a warm glow over the golden leaves scattered across the ground. It was supposed to be a day to reflect and reconnect, but my mind was restless, replaying everything that had happened. James and I had worked hard to rebuild what was broken, and for the most part, we were succeeding. But deep down, something still felt unresolved. Ellie's betrayal lingered like a shadow, and no amount of time seemed to erase it completely. That afternoon, while James was at work, I received an email from Ellie. I hesitated before opening it, my stomach twisting with unease. Asterisk subject. Final words. Asterisk. Curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. The email was long, almost like a journal entry, and it caught me completely off guard. She wrote about her decision to leave the city, how she was working with a therapist to confront her insecurities and the toxic patterns she developed over the years. But it was the next part that truly shocked me. "You deserve the truth, even if it hurts," she wrote. "I've spent months trying to figure out why I did what I did. At first, I told myself it was because James was my soulmate, but that wasn't it. The truth is, I envied you. Your life, your confidence, your happiness. It made me feel like I was drowning in my own failures. I wanted to take something from you, to feel like I was on the same level, but I only ended up destroying myself." Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. For years, I had thought of Ellie as my closest friend, someone who genuinely celebrated my successes and stood by me through my struggles. But now I realized that she had been carrying resentment all along. The email ended with a final plea for forgiveness, but it didn't feel manipulative this time. It felt genuine, raw, and heartbreakingly honest. Asterisk, I know I don't deserve your forgiveness, and I don't expect it. But I needed you to know the truth, so you can move on without wondering why. I'm so sorry for everything. Asterisk. I closed the email and sat in stunned silence. For the first time, I felt a strange sense of closure, not just with Ellie, but with the entire ordeal. Her confession didn't excuse her actions, but it gave me the clarity I had been searching for. That evening, James and I went for a walk, hand in hand. As we strolled through the quiet streets, I finally told him about the email. He listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. "How do you feel about it?" he asked. "I think I'm done holding on to it," I said. "Ellie's not a part of my life anymore, and I don't want her mistakes to dictate my happiness. I can forgive her for my own sake, but that doesn't mean I'll ever trust her again." James nodded. "You're stronger than you give yourself credit for," he said. "And no matter what happens, I'm here with you." For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. The weight of betrayal and doubt had lifted, replaced by a quiet sense of peace. Life isn't perfect, and it never will be. But this experience taught me something invaluable: the importance of setting boundaries, protecting my peace, and choosing relationships that lift me up rather than tear me down. Ellie and I may never cross paths again, but her betrayal no longer defined me. And James? He stayed by my side, proving every day that our love was worth fighting for. In the end, I realized that healing doesn't mean erasing the scars. It means wearing them as proof of your strength and resilience. And as I looked at James, his hand in mine, I knew we were ready to face whatever challenges life had in store for us, together. The past was finally where it belonged, behind me,